Everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. We're going to do a little more work on the XL-870. We are actually ready to start reassembling it. Not totally though, not all the gaskets that I need and such have arrived. So today we're going to put together the bottom end as far as we can. We won't be able to completely seal it. I'm still missing the ignition back plate gasket. Looks like Monday or Tuesday those ought to be here, which is great since I ordered them a week ago Monday. It's not the seller's. It is not the seller's problem that's causing this. This is inefficiencies in the shipping world. I don't know what else to say there. So, we have a tank and crankcase assembly here. I guess that's about as good as we're going to get. I've got it kind of locked down. I can't show you a whole lot. Bar stud retainers are intact. This area, the bar mounting area, is not all blown out like that other case was. So, I have done next to nothing other than set a new crankshaft seal in here. And everything else we'll do along the way. Let me get the crank out of the freezer. Keeps them fresh. No, you guys know what I'm up to. At least I'll bet you do. I froze it so it'll be easier to pull this thing into shape. So I don't mind doing some taparoo to take it out because I'm hammering on a straight section here, and you guys saw that I wasn't hammering hard. But if I try to reinstall it, now I've got to hammer across. This isn't designed for that kind of pressure, so we're going to pull it into place. And I don't want to hold on to that any longer than I have to. So the simple way is going to be, again, using my busted clutch plate here with a proper clutch removal tool and a whole bunch of washers and spacers to pull that thing in where it belongs. It is literally that simple. And I'm not super technical on all this. I just keep a whole bunch of oddball shaped crap around of different heights and sizes. Looks like we're going to be using nothing but washers on this one. So over here, just out of your guys' view, down on the bench, I have a whole variety of washers that are big enough that they will clear the crankshaft. I have an old bearing here that makes a good spacer. That crap. We're almost there. See, this is actually one where I wish I had, actually I could use that nut. We'll see. Actually, that's one too many with the way this is machined. Oh, and did I set that so low? Dummy. Set this too low in my vise. Come on. There we go. Now there's room. Is that going to start? It is. Okay. Trying to get this to start straight. I don't necessarily want to put the crankshaft key back in yet because we do need to make a repair. There. Whoop. Oh, this is how this is going to go. Sure, I try to do things right, and this is how I'm repaid. Now, what I'm doing holding this with my thumb is kind of dangerous, because I could lose my thumb at some point, and I like my thumb. Alright, you can see I'm bottomed out now. There's nothing fast or elegant about this. You just got to keep doing what you're doing until the thing is fully seated. I'm going to add one more washer here, and then I will probably on the next pull go ahead and add that nut in. I'll try and get you guys an absolute view oh boy, this is tough. I don't know how I'm going to do this, to be honest, to give you guys a view of what's happening and still be able to do anything myself. Alright, it's about as good as it gets. Watch the gap get smaller, assuming that I can do this without knocking you guys over. Can't even see. Keep the tool in the damn clutch plate. Okay. Again, that's all there is to it. But I don't want to try and fight around this tripod for this entire job. So we're going to back you guys up. And I will probably quit talking and just hit fast forward on the video, because this is about like watching paint dry. You will know when it bottoms out. It's going to tell you. And it's going to be damned close to the edge of the crankcase here. Give you guys a look at that. As you're pulling that last little bit through, you want to make sure your washer is big enough to clear that ridge on the crankshaft. That's what your oil pump worm gear and that last thrust washer rest against. That's what makes the whole system work. So you don't really want to F that ridge up. Like, not at all. You can see how tight the tolerance is there. But that is what it should be. Just like that. Alright, I can lower this a little bit now. At least temporarily. We need to lubricate the bearing and install our bearing retainer screws. It is so easy to forget that. And then you get to do everything over again. I don't know about you. I don't like that. If you like that, go ahead and forget the screws. But don't forget them forever, because if the crankshaft walks while it's running, I don't think you guys are going to like the results. I know I wouldn't. So to lubricate the bearing, we're just going to reach in right here with our handy dandy oil can and pump a little bit in. Now, is this going to cause a little smoke? Yep. Do I care? Nope. Okay, I haven't subjected this crank to anything bad. I simply cleaned all the carbon out that I could using brake clean, and then a wire wheel on the grinder, and I cleaned up the ridge that had been on the around the seal, you know, of old material and crap on both sides. So that's good. That's nice and tight. There's no play in there. So if you guys recall from the disassembly, you should recall the screw locations. Okay, so that's not a terrible view. If I can do this without blocking your guys' view. So you got to get those to start. You know, these are a lock washer, and I don't want them to be a pain in the ass if they ever have to be removed again. But this is such a high importance area that I'm going to use just a small amount of blue, Loctite blue, on these. And I'm going to see if I can get lucky and set that screw in place using my needle nose pliers and not have to chase it. Mostly, it didn't set down in the threads. Damn it. Now, that's even worse. Well, what's the worst that can happen? I cuss and scream and we do it again. Yeah, that's about, looks like the worst. Turned sideways on me. That was not ideal. I'm trying to avoid this lock washer dropping off. There, that looks a little better. Except that's threading sideways. We don't really care for that. That's better. I think you'll recall I loosened these with an impact. I can tighten them by hand because, well, no damage has been done. Okay. Try and get number 2 in. Again, all it is getting that lock washer into that bearing groove, and if the washer goes in, it's going to go into the groove. If the washer goes into place, I should say. And that's all it takes to retain that bearing and keep it from walking. You got a magnesium case. I'm not going to be able to do this on this side. This is not going to be as pretty. Got a magnesium case and a steel shelled bearing. The thermal expansion will not be the same. That start, I think it did. That's right, I like that. So how much freezing the crankshaft, damn it, will you hold still? Alright. You want to play games, buddy. Play games with a big screwdriver. That's what I thought. Freezing the crankshaft does improve how quickly it goes in and how much effort it takes. I mean, do you have to? No, you don't. Is it going to make it easier? Yes, I believe it does. Well, I know it does. It takes less effort to get it in place. So, if you can plan ahead, great. I mean, really, 15 or 20 minutes is probably all it's going to take. I happened to throw it in there last night, well, because I was thinking about it. Okay. That is... yeah, that's gonna have to be it. Okay. So I need to dry... there's a little condensation left over from the freezing and thawing process here. Condensation that I don't want in my bearings. And you shouldn't want it in yours either. So, one of the many uses of WD-40. Nice little pre-treatment there. And I'm actually going to leave it on in the hopes that getting the piston in place with all 28 little needle bearings will be easier. I don't know about that. But here's my thought. If we do that... how's my piston? There it is. If we do that, the lubrication on the crankshaft should help prevent the needles from sticking to the crank and will help the grease retain them to this rod. I could be completely daft and out of my mind. Actually, you guys have seen my collection. You know that I'm out of my mind. That's just a given. Alright, come down here at first. I'm certain that I've showed this process before. This is another one that at a certain point I will go ahead and hit fast forward on. But for those that haven't been around the channel that long, we'll talk through this for just a second. You've got to find a way to retain all of those connecting rod needles and not drop them while you're bolting everything together. Now, some people will swear up and down it's easier to take the piston off. You have less to excuse me, kind of support, yes, but you also then have to worry about resetting the wrist pin through and getting all your retainers in and all that sort of stuff. And when you have to drive the wrist pin in, you're putting some sideways pressure on everything. So I just assemble it this way, one less step. Remember, it's a fractured end cap, so you want to get your stuff lined up so that you're putting it together appropriately. Damn it, appropriately. Try not to put your thumb in your fresh grease like, well, I just did. Okay. So from here, just get your needles, start getting them in place. And this is imperfect. You will drop them. That's why you want a relatively clean working surface. And somewhere that if you accidentally drop one, you can find it again. Lose one, and unless you've got some laying around that you've salvaged, you are going to be putting an entire new set in there. Alright. I don't want to go too tight. That's probably as good as we're going to get. We'll see. Yeah, that's as good as we're going to get. Because I've got to have some room to sling some elbows here. Get my grease out of the way. Alright. I've kind of made up my own way of doing this. Just in a way that works for me. Okay. Now you're lucky on a saw of this style, there's enough room to get your hands, at least my finger and thumb in, to hold that lower cap in place. The Super EZs, Super XLs, I typically will send it back this way, rotate the crank back, and use a screwdriver to hold it up. Ooh, I touched it. Okay, I think I got it. I say, if you fail on your first 17 attempts, I do not at all blame you for getting upset, but expect, until you kind of get a feel for this, it's going to be a pain in your butt. It's just reality. Alright, I may have put... I got irritated and cleaned some stuff, not much, but some stuff off the workbench, and I think that Allen wrench that I need is one of them. I'm going to go ahead and get this back screw started. I know you guys can't see through my arm and hand. I'm just doing the fingertip tickle here. Get it done as much by finger as you can. Now at this point, I'm not worried about dropping a needle. But you got to get those down to where you don't see much of any gap. That little bit right there is about all you can afford. So let's start tightening this down. I have never put Loctite on these bolts. I've never seen a publication say you need to. And that includes the original Homelite service manuals. So therefore I don't. Okay, we're getting close on this one. How tight is tight enough? That much right there. Give it a good twist. When you see your hex key is flexing, your Allen wrench, whatever you want to call it, you have it tight enough. See this? Try and get, you guys can see that. See, I'm bending the Allen wrench. She's tight. Okay. So that actually went much better than I anticipated it going. I've certainly had them go that smooth before, but typically not on video. That's usually when all the bad tendencies come out. And since I said something, now my left hand is trying to cramp. Hell's bells. Alright. Let me find our cylinder. I want to show you guys how nicely this cleaned up. And I'm going to back us off a little bit here. Now this doesn't have a lot of wear, but it's got some marks in there. So I don't know how long it's been on there, but I can say for 100% certainty this has never been overheated. And that's nice. That's really nice. Need my ring compressor. And which one? That will be the one that does the trick. Pulled the ring out and cleaned up the carbon behind it, and I used some actual Mother's aluminum polish to clean the carbon marks mostly off of the piston. And that makes me pretty happy. I feel good about that. Alright, that was just about 1 pump of oil. That's all it takes. Just a little something something. Get your cylinder ready for that not so dry start with any luck. Okay, make sure all the buttons are in. Because those are unobtainium. Again, that only applies to this Dykes ring style. So I did a little research on it. This was just an alternate method of getting combustion gases to seal the ring tighter. And that was bringing the gases in from the top and behind the ring. So just a different way of going about it. Given that Homelite only experimented on this with some saws in the 60s and maybe the very early 70s, very early, I guess they decided you didn't really need to screw around with that kind of stuff. Gasket is still on the bottom of the cylinder and it didn't tear. There's not a mark on it, therefore I am reusing it. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Alright, I ran all this hardware through the ultrasonic cleaner over there, and it did a decent job of cleaning everything up. But that also means that all my sorted piles are now unsorted, so I'll have to pay a little more attention to the hardware. But 1/4-inch nuts and lock washers, well, kind of hard to mix those up with anything else. Classic chainsaw parts, I guess, is their current store name on eBay. That's who supplied this crankcase, and I will give them credit. Whatever they're doing to clean parts up there, they do a good job with it. Stuff comes in looking pretty good. I did have to chip a bunch of sap and shit out of the bottom mount here, but I don't hold that against them. I literally had to chisel that out with the dental pick and some persuasion. Alright, now I swore I pulled 4 nuts out of tight enough is tight enough, and we're almost there. Yeah. If you've messed with any 1/4-inch hardware, you know when you've got it tight enough. Okay, that looks good. That's good. Oh, and that's good. Not bad. That actually went really smoothly, folks. Scarily smoothly. Okay. We need to put together a reed system. And that reminds me, I think I noted it in the video, but the gasket between this and this was, well, not there. No other way to put it. So I need to grab, I don't think I set that out here yet. I guess I did. Look at me being more prepared than normal, and then forgetting that I was more prepared than normal. That's fairly normal. Alright. Alright, I'm going to start all this stuff by hand. I do not want to risk damage on this new crankcase. or new to us. Now it looks pretty damn good. If I had all the parts. We could do this today. But I don't. So we won't. Okay. We could throw the throttle handle on. We could. But it's a whole lot easier to fish ignition components through. I don't. I can't remember how easily this... Oh, that... Oh. Oh. Okay. Well, we had good spark before, so I'll repair that. That gives us the freedom to put the throttle handle on. But I have some Harbor Freight glove blowouts, and I need to get some more parts together, so give me a minute, and we will come back. Okay, let's do some work on this side of this old girl. There we go. We'll start with getting the oil pump back in place. Let's have a quick discussion. So that's wide open to the other side, and yet we're installing this gasket assembly that's also an air block. Why? Well, you look at the XL-101 and 102, 103, and 104, and the early versions had it was fairly open. Okay. Well, that slipped into place, so I'm not going to screw it up. It was fairly open through here, just like these are fairly open, and XL-700 fairly open. Well, I can't find documentation explicitly stating this, but the best I can tell is that Homelite initially thought that, hey, we're going to get airflow all the way around the crankcase here, and it's going to be great. There was a kit that was sold for one of these. I don't remember if it was this family or the 101 family, where they actually glued a chunk of hose in here. A lot of guys have found that and gone, what the hell? Where does that hose go? Well, it's just a sawdust block. What they were finding, what it looks like, what I can tell, okay, this is now my opinion here, what it appears happened was that they were getting so much sawdust and oil drawn from this side, and it was clogging everything up. So the flywheel, instead of just primarily drawing air through the starter cover, was drawing from both sides and just making a giant mess. So therefore, this has to be blocked off. It's kind of anti what you would expect. Okay, oil pump is free and clear. Turn it over with your hand, and you can, if you can do that with your thumb, finger, whatever, your oil pump's good. Alright, so we had an issue removing this, if you guys remember. And we're just going to make sure, even though I've cleaned it, we're going to make sure that there's no issue again. Ah, it's tight. That's interesting. That really makes me think there's something going on there. I'm curious. It's been a long enough hot minute since I disassembled this as to whether there should be a washer down in there. There's not. So, we'll just go ahead and get everything installed. Yeah, it's just a tiny bit rough. I didn't think so. Thought I'd give it a try. There we go. I remember. Should have looked at the screw pattern here. Where the hell? I think it's like that. It is. There we go. Again, only a number 10 screw, so you don't need to get fully medieval on it. Okay, that's good enough for that. That'll work just fine. What's up? Alright. I'm trying to think of what would be the smartest here. I actually do think getting that throttle handle on before too terribly long, because we've got to get our oil line routed. And not have it be a pain in the arse. Good thing is, I don't think there was anything we needed to do with this. Zoom you guys. Whoop. That is back. Okay. Alright. I think I'm going to go ahead. Nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that instead. Only thing I didn't find, and I will, was the little rubber seal grommet thing that goes in down here. It would appear that this might have gotten torqued a little bit. Beautiful. I like it. All right. What am I forgetting? Nothing. Nothing other than we need to service this tank vent. Oh boy, if that had been any harder, I'd have put it on the impact. Oops. Even when you find these new old stock, unless they're coming from somebody like me who changes it out, the duct bill is gonna be shot. I can just about guarantee it for you. And this one's completely missing. So that's convenient. I don't have to do a bunch of cleanup on it. What is inconvenient is I need to get it apart. So you can see the seam there at the end cap. You can pop that out in order to put a new duct bill in. And that's exactly what we're going to attempt to do right now. Spin you guys over towards the vise and see how well this goes. That's about as good as we're going to get. So what you do is you clamp it as much on the flat portion and away from the threads, obviously. But you got to get this pretty tight. This can be a real miserable booger to get that cap out of. And what you need is some sort of a thin tool that'll reach all the way through there and pop it loose without getting said tool jammed up. And this one is barely long enough. And that's not tight enough. I can see it moving. There. You see how the end cap just popped out? And I don't quite have that jammed up. That is rather convenient. Now what you don't want to do is lose this, because it's not available as a non-assembly. Alright. Don't be a shit about it, do you? Come on. Miserable little butt. Alright. Well, I got that nice and dirty. There's a little bit of crap left on it, but not a lot. Not a lot at all. Now, this munched a little bit. I don't like that. I had to tighten that way more than I cared to. See how this cap goes back in. I'm not feeling totally great about that. Drop a duckbill valve in. It'll still go. That's the first time I've actually had one of these deform in the vise. Lord. Hell. Alright, and then we're going to hammer that end cap back in. Hopefully without causing any major issues. Looks pretty good to me. Now the tank will vent properly again. Oh, let's come back over here. Alright. We'll run this back in. Looks a little worse for the wear, but not terribly. Let's see if the socket will still fit it. Come on. Yeah, it will. Okay, that's aluminum. That should have sealed with that amount of crank down. Alright, the gasket here is likewise still good and usable, and it's going to get good and used. Well, there we go. So there should be some screws of all about the same length in here for the carb chamber, and then one long one for down at the bottom. I think this was a long one down at the bottom. You guys remember the one I was talking? Oh yeah. That looks about right. What you don't want to do is tighten it all the way yet. And in fact, I'm not so worried about those as I am the oil lines. I want some room to work. Okay. Well, that was fun. Let's go ahead and get this throttle handle tightened down. No, let's not. Let's do what I said we were going to do. And do a fuel hose. Now, there it is, right where I left it. Still with some old Tygon on. So let's get that off if we can. Booyah. Clean this barb up. Okay. Grab a couple grommets. Now, this is probably the part of my fuel hose kit that people probably throw away an awful lot, and you really shouldn't. Because the grommet that goes in through, well, I guess it would help if you guys could see. The grommet that the fuel hose comes, this hose comes through, you've got to trim, I like to at least, a little bit off the end. So it'll sit flat against the wall of the carb chamber. And yes, I'm playing with fire here. And what I like to do, make sure I don't F this up, is opposite side it. Do the same damn thing. Just fits in here a little bit better. The molded hoses had kind of a grommet built into them to seal up the air box. Like I said, I don't find aftermarket hoses to be all that pleasurable to work with. Your alternative would be to use a little RTV around this. And since I'm babbling about this one, I guess I will relocate this saw yet again, and we'll go ahead and install it. So it's right underneath this screw. I'll just relocate it down to here. And these grommets may not be the perfect solution for this location, but it's the best I've come up with. Until I do better, that's what they're going to be. Alright, that's close enough. So we'll go ahead and pop that through, and again, the idea is it'll sit flat against the chamber wall and then the crankcase. And there you are. And they actually should install pretty stinking easy. Whoop. So easily you can push it all the way through. Okay. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternatives of nothing at all. Alright, let me cut some hoses here. Go ahead and get those installed loosely. this one up here, I don't know which way I want to fish. Whichever way doesn't rip the grommet out. I'm almost thinking I'm doing this bass backwards. If I go that way, we're going to find out. So this is going to look awful tight, but I've done it on a lot of saws and never had a problem with constricting the fuel hose. So, and you guys can't see that out there. Oh yeah. That's right, fuel hose. Who's your daddy? There we go. That is as far as I need that to go at this exact moment. Let's go ahead and install our tank grommet and hose. Again, this is simply because I'm trying to button stuff up on this side of the saw, knowing that I can't on the other side of the saw. And I'll try to do a little time management so that this video doesn't get incredibly long. Now, there's the other grommet. That one installs in much the same way that it does in the Super EZ tank. You kind of drop it down there, hold one side down, and start pushing the other side in. And since you can't see by the time your finger's in the way, you just pretty much hope for the best. There we go. I'm telling you, this is so much easier than the formed hoses. It's just not funny. And my personal opinion is it's just as durable, if not more. Certainly more serviceable on the back end. So with that slash cut, I'm literally just pushing this in by hand. And I can feel the hose with this other finger, and I'm going to guide it right the hell out of the tank. And just bloop. There she is. Okay, so I think I've done this on video enough times. We're going to stretch this end a little bit. Today is not a cold day. In fact, you'll note I'm in a t-shirt. This is the first day that has truly felt like spring weather that I can think of. It's supposed to be a high of about 67 today. You probably have already hit that. Alright, I'm going to put a little oil on the barb here of this fuel pipe to make my life easier. And I'll see if I need to use pliers or if the hose, look at that, the hose is cooperating somewhat today. You don't want to crush and damage this pipe. What you're trying to do is get the hose out just to about where the elbow is there. And I am failing at doing this gracefully. There we go. Found the magic spot. Okay. Because what you're going to end up doing is pulling it through the tank. You've got your ridge right here, and the minute that ridge pops through, you stop. And then this section is what's sealing into the grommet. So there's still some lube on there. I'm going to start slowly pulling on this. I'll get you guys as close as I can. I don't know. Okay. As the best view I can get you guys, watch what happens here. Starting to come in, starting to come. Oh, right there. See that? And that's the way you want it. Little chunk of hose sticking out of the tank. You now have the full width of the grommet sealing that thing in. All we need to do now is get this hose on without making a mess. You can connect this one to that one first. Again, today I'm not so worried about it. This hose is behaving itself relatively well. So we'll see if I have to throw a little tantrum or if we can just make this happen. I'm kind of thinking we're just going to make it happen. Skip the tantrum today. Look at that. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay. About a 1/4 inch back is all you need here. Which means that is good enough. I always send you guys plenty on this line. There's always plenty there. Okay. Now, my hardware pile is conspicuously missing that clamp. So I'm wondering... No, it's not still on the old crankcase. So what did I do with it? That is mildly irritating. Such a tiny little thing that would be easy to lose. And it almost looks like I managed to do just that. Alright, we're going to skip that for now, out of necessity. And I'll see what I can do to locate it. I might have to clean this bench, and that would not be fun. Alright. I guess we've dilly-dallied around long enough. We might as well get this thing, this throttle handle, truly secure. Don't forget the lower one, or it will rattle out and be gone. Alright, we've made a hell of a lot of progress. Let's do just a little bit more before I call this. Let's take a peek at the clutch. So I mentioned coming off that I thought the screws were wrong. They weren't. Well, they were incorrect screws. They were not the incorrect size. But this carrier is pretty torn out from a previous attempt at removing the clutch itself. And I have a different clutch that had, I don't remember the story on this, but I've got the right screws, I've got the right washers, I've got half a complement here. So we're going to make this a full complement. I'm going to take this old clutch and pop one spring out. Then you can take the shoes out. Now I'm not going to get rid of this, I'll save it for parts. Deal with that later. But to add some more shoes to this one, we'll do the same thing, only in reverse. Now you can just pop them in. Or at least you could, if these were the right shoes. Oh, look at that. Okay, I didn't plan ahead as well as I thought I did. That's interesting. Real interesting. Okay, just barely. I used to have so many of these clutch shoes, and now I have far less of these clutch shoes. It sounds like Poopsie woke up. Oh goody. Alright, and once you've got a full complement in there, then you play the game of, can I make the spring go back in without tearing up your fingers or your whatever. There we go. So I guess I will be reusing that carrier. I completely muffed that one. I'll be damned. Okay. So we're using a rim sprocket. That is new. That's 4047. I don't want to run 404 on this thing. No offense. But that seems like a dumb idea. So we'll put a standard 3/8 on here, I think. Suppose I could put an 8-pin. You know what? We'll do that. We'll just, maybe 3/8. There we go. Lightly used. Very lightly used. So we need our thrust washer for our oil pump worm gear. We need to lubricate our bearing. Coincidentally, that will get the same grease that we used for holding our needles in place for that connecting rod bearing. We will use the same tool to load it up. I like this style of bearing. Homelite had many different styles of cage bearing like this under the same part number. I think it depended on who they were getting it from at the time. A lot of these older ones have a nice recess where you can really pack the grease in. And again, there's always people out there that'll say, I've never greased a bearing in my life on a chainsaw and it's been fine. Which could be true. I challenge you, though, to tell me why packing it with grease, which Homelite recommended, by the way, why that's a bad thing. And don't tell me the sawdust is going to pack up in here. Because it's not. Alright. 3/8, on she goes. Alright. Now, we all need to help me remember that I can't start this until I've torqued this down. And I can't torque this down effectively until I put my flywheel on. I mean, yes, I could jam rope in the spark plug hole. I don't want to. We're not going to do that. We're just going to lightly spin the old clutch on. Okay, that moves. That means I have that in the right sequence. That also means I can't put the can't put the clutch cover on. So I'm going to put those screws and that cover off to a side here and hope it doesn't become the forgotten side. Because that clutch, the first rev would walk off and go. I think I've shown you guys my dented shop light from the time I did that. And I'm glad it wasn't my head that got dented. Alright, last thing we're doing today. Muffler. So I spent a lot of time trying to clean this up. It's soaked in the ultrasonic cleaner and ran through about 3 cycles, got up to 150 degrees in that water, and I still had to use some steel wool to really scrub this down and polish it out as best I could. You'll note that the mount for the cylinder side is a little torn out, so I've put a washer on one of these mounting screws to just give it a little better bite. This does not use a gasket, so I cleaned up the flange as best I could of all the old crap, and we'll just hope that she seals pretty well. I'm going to guess that this ran with a loose screw at some point, and that's why it's ogged out around this. But I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. Maybe the metal just got weak. Certainly, in its time installed on this cylinder, was not overheating. That I know for a fact. Okay. This had a spark arrestor screen home built in it. I have a new Homelite one intended for this muffler. Okay, good enough. There's our baffle plate. Here's a new spark arrestor. Beautiful. I beat this cover plate back out where the holes have been sandwiched down. We will see if I can install everything here and get it to fit so that it doesn't immediately bend itself yet again. Because that would suck. Alright, I may be leaving these a little bit loose, but I'm not going to crank until it bottoms out. I'll leave it right like that until I know it's not good enough. Okay, we have made a crap ton of progress here. I'm pretty happy about it. When we come back, it will be when I have the gasket for this ignition back plate. We'll repair that spark plug wire. All we're going to do is clip the old end off and reset the terminal, put that on there. That'll all go in real nicely from here. I will rebuild that Tillotson HS carburetor off camera. There is plenty of HS videos out there in the playlist. Go check them out. And we'll button this up. With any luck, we'll be looking at a test run. Yeah, with any luck. I'm sure there's a few things I forgot on the other side. There's an oil line clamp here that I see isn't back there yet. I am not seeing that on my bench. I hope it didn't go the same place that fuel line clamp did. But that we'll worry about another day. Catch you on the next episode.